Hello everyone, welcome back. It's story time about how I injured my wrist and almost quit violin altogether. Let's go. Now before we start, I'm not really good at talking. Sometimes I ramble a lot, and I will try to keep this story concise and entertaining. To be honest, I would choose sight reading the most difficult pieces over talking for a long period of time. But I would try my best, so please bear with me. So this wrist injury actually took quite a few years to build up, and finally at one day it just kind of happened. It snapped, and I just had a really hard time recovering from it. And only about 2 years ago, around 2023, I started feeling more confident in my wrist, and I started building back up from scratch, learning the violin, trying to perfect my technique so that this sort of thing would never happen again. So let's start from how it all started. This all started during my second years of my master's degree. I was studying in Tel Aviv University, Bookman Mehta School of Music in Israel. I was there because a friend of mine recommended me to study with a professor there, Eyal Kless. He's an amazing teacher. Towards the end of my bachelor's degree, I had this huge problem where my bow would shake uncontrollably on stage, even if I'm not nervous. So my friend saw this and she recommended me to study with this professor in Tel Aviv because him and his father are amazing teachers that can break things down to the most minute detail, and they helped me rebuild my technique up, and I'm very grateful for all their teachings, and they have helped me tremendously in terms of my right arm technique, sound, and also my musicality all around. So Tel Aviv is a very humid city. During the summer, because we're very close to the sea, there's always a little bit of saltiness in the air, and every time there's wind blows, you can kind of taste the sand and the salt in the air, which is nice, but it's extremely bad for the instruments. So during my second year, my violin neck fell off. So I had to bring it to the luthier. And he fixed it very quickly. I got it the next day, and I didn't think much of it, so I just went back and started practicing. But during that week, I noticed that even after playing for 2 hours, my hand would be so tired and in pain, which never really happened because in Singapore, I would practice 4 or 5 hours a day and I wouldn't feel a thing. But after the repair, I couldn't play for more than 2 hours without feeling pain. So I checked, and this string action, this is not the violin at that time. I bought this violin new last year. But my violin at that time here, this was extremely high. The action was much higher than this one. So that means every time I try to bring the string down, especially in difficult pieces, I'm exerting much more force than necessary. So I brought the violin back to the luthier and I said, hey, the string is a little bit too high for myself. Do you mind adjusting it for me? And he said, well, then you have to pay for the second repair. And also, this is how the Russians like it. I don't know which part of my appearance give off the Russian vibe, but I didn't know what to say back to him. I said, but this is too high for me. Like, I'm not a tall guy. I'm like 164 or something like that. And my hand is not the, biggest. So it's kind of tiring. And then he said, well, then you have to pay for the second repair. And just like any student, I didn't have money for a second repair. I'm already skipping meals to pay for the first repair. So I just thought, I would just suck it up and continue playing as is. So that was my very first mistake, being too agreeable and not asserting myself. I have that problem where I don't demand for what I want. I've learned from that mistake since then. If I feel like something is not right, I always try to speak up about it now. But at that time, I did not have that confidence, and that was my first mistake. But it wasn't really a big deal because I was young, I was strong, I can power through it, even though it felt very painful and tiring after a long session of practice. I just thought oh, my hands will get stronger. Which would be true if not for my second mistake, which is a very stupid one. My second mistake was a very poor diet. So as I mentioned, every student they have no money. And I come from not a rich family and from not a rich country. I'm from Myanmar, and for the master's degree, my parents and family friends and very generous strangers have helped out by donating money for my studies, and we managed to gather up $3,000, but that was my budget for the entire degree. Rent alone is about $300. It would last me around 10 months if I only use that money for rent. Now, the school in Tel Aviv, Bookman Meta School of Music, they are very generous and they're very nice. They have a program where if you're part of the orchestra, you have scholarship. But for myself, I only have scholarship for tuition. That means, living expenses, I have to fork it out myself. So I was very money conscious in my first year. My first year, I just set aside around $10 for a week. My budget was $10 for a week. I would save as much as possible. My diet consisted of beans and potatoes, and I would eat that sparingly, like once a day. I would eat a lot during lunch, and I would skip dinner and breakfast. And I lived like that for a whole year. When I reached Tel Aviv, I was around 50 kilos, and by the end of my first year, I was around 45. The school administration saw what was happening, and they were so nice. They sat me down and asked my situation, like, hey, is everything okay? And I told them my situation. I said, I probably cannot come back for a second or third year, but I really do want to continue, and I'm working very hard in what I can do, which is violin. I would practice like 6-7 hours a day, and they see the result. Every orchestra audition, I'm prepared. I always get the front section of the orchestra in school. I attend every class, and my teacher wrote a very nice recommendation letter for me asking for assistance. And the school provided. They after around 7 months, they found sponsors that managed to help me with dorm, and I had a 200 shekels surplus, which is around $50-$60 at that time, and that was enough for me to eat during the month. But after 1 year of that diet, I was extremely malnourished. On top of that, I made another huge mistake, and this one I'm very embarrassed by, which is alcohol. In daily interaction, I'm actually a very socially awkward person, and I'm not great with socializing, especially with strangers. But once I make friends, we're very close, but to get to the friend stage, it takes me a long time. And in university, sometimes I get invited to parties, and I would feel so much social anxiety that I started just, drinking beer. And I found out that I'm actually a very happy drunk. I've become very charismatic and a party person. So people love having me around during parties. At least that's what I felt. And they would invite me to parties all the time, and I would go. But combine that with the fact that I don't eat dinner, that means that I drink alcohol on an empty stomach at night. And I just got addicted to that feeling, because I feel extremely sharp and focused in the morning if I had beer the day before. And that became a very unhealthy habit. So even when I had a little bit more money in second year, and also in my second year, I started picking up more and more gigs because people found out I'm pretty good at sight reading. And I would get regularly called to gigs and concerts to fill in or to play. Even in my second year, because of the bad habits I picked up in the first year, I just continued that lifestyle. I would just eat one meal during lunch, a very light meal in the dinner, and then I would drink. It's a very unhealthy habit, please don't do what I did. My diet did not get better, so I'm still kind of malnourished. So that means with a poor diet, whatever damage that I have done within my body does not actually have the nutrients to like recover. And on top of that, I have terrible sleep schedule because at night people will come to my dorm room and party there, because my dorm room sort of become like a party central. I don't know. So my friends would come to my dorm room. We would sit around until 1 or 2 a.m. But then I would wake up at 6:30, prepare my bike, and go to rehearsal by 9. And that just continued until the day I graduated. Like, we never stopped, which was fun at that time, but in retrospect, it was extremely self-destructive. So I never had proper sleep to recover from injury as well, in retrospect. Which leads to my next big mistake. I never gave myself time to heal. During the 3 years of study in Israel, I never stopped practicing violin for even a day. My practice would range from 6 hours to 9 hours. Like every day, I would just play. In the morning, I would go to Yafo for rehearsal for around 3 to 4 hours. And then during the day, I would go to classes and practice my own repertoire. If at night I have a concert, then I will go to the concert. If not, I'll be practicing until 10 or 11. Even during Shabbat, which is Friday and Saturday, I would go to school and practice the whole day. And sometimes, this is a funny story, because the gate that leads to music school is closed on Shabbat, and there's only one gate that's open on the other side. We're so lazy to just like walk an extra 15 minutes. I would regularly climb the fence just to save 15 minutes time and go straight to school, which is extremely stupid because Israel security, they don't take those kind of actions lightly. But they never caught me. I believe now they actually put grease on the fence so that the music students would stop climbing the fence just to save that 15 minutes. So I never took time to rest, to recover from whatever damage I have been building up in my hand. I started noticing something is wrong only like 7 or 8 months after the repair. Like every time I play high position, I will feel a tingle here. Even now, my hand, if you can see my range of motion, my left hand is much less than my right. My right can go all the way down here. My left, I'm stuck here. And 2 years ago, it was stuck here. I could not go past this. Only last year I started, stretching again, and finally it's coming down. But in Israel during that time, it will hurt even if I do this. If I do this, I will feel the pain here. But I was young and stupid, so I did not do anything about it, and I just powered through it. Which leads to my next huge mistake. Very bad practice habits. Whenever I practice, I would never warm up. Not even with scales. I would go straight to the most difficult thing and just practice that passage for hours, and then maybe take a little rest. And then when I come back from the rest, do I warm up again? No, I just pick up the violin, go to the next difficult spot and practice, which is very harmful in the long run now that I learned my lesson. You should always warm up, especially if you're getting older. And you might be asking, well, why didn't you go to the doctor if you felt so much pain? Because of something that happened during my childhood, I was very ill for a period of time. I have this very strong distrust for doctors. I know it's illogical and I know it's unhealthy, but I do have that. And also on top of that, I did not have health insurance in Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv is a very expensive city. I couldn't afford the health insurance even with all the gigs and the scholarship money. I did not get a health insurance. So when it all happened, I just said, it will heal. It will pass. So I never saw a doctor. So I graduated with all this, but I powered through. It never got to the point where I cannot play or it's so painful that I cannot move. It never got to that point until in Singapore. Now, because teaching is not the most strenuous job, it did not actually become a problem. Sometimes I just verbally describe what the student should do instead of demonstrating, and that gave me some time to rest. So the problem kind of like subsided for a while. But the year of 2018, I decided to try out for a competition while having a full-time job. So that meant I had to find whatever time I had to practice. Now, in Singapore, everywhere you go, if it's indoors, it's heavily air conditioned. Sometimes it can get so cold that it's like 16, 17 degrees Celsius. Combine that with the fact that I don't have a habit of warming up is a spell for disaster. And also, I never really fixed the neck again because it never dropped. So I just kept practicing on the high strings. And if you play violin, you would know every year you should go for a maintenance because even the string tension pulling the neck this way, it will drop over time. So the string height got even higher. But me being cheap and lazy and stupid never got the problem fixed. I was just like, it's okay. I played like that for 3 years. What's the worst that can happen? So I just played on a really high tension string in an air conditioned room with no warm up. And every day, just like right now, I only have about 1 hour or 1.5 hours to practice. And so everything is kind of building towards this moment now. For the competition, I decided to play what I have learned last, which is the most ridiculous program I can think of for a competition. But at that time, I was feeling confident because I know I can do it physically. So the program for the first round was Bach, Adagio and Fugue in G minor, and then Paganini Caprice number 1, which is manageable, nothing out of the ordinary. But for the second round, they wanted a bunch of pieces that I do have, but I haven't played them in a while. The program for the second round that I chose was Erlkönig, Ernst, Isai Solo Violin Sonata number 6, and Debussy Violin Sonata, and one set piece that they have back to back. It's even now, I'm looking back at it from now, it's such a stupid idea. I should have just like learned something else or just picked an easier piece like Sonata number 3 Ballade would be easier than number 6. But because of the hubris, I guess, I thought it's fine, I will do it. So leading up to the competition, I practiced. On my off day, I would practice for many hours. But during my working days, I would skip lunch. I would skip lunch and practice during my lunch break in an air-conditioned room with no warm-up. And in the evening, I still have an alcohol problem at that time. So in the evening, I would drink, and sometimes I would practice some more while drunk. How I managed to find a wife and get married is a mystery to me. Thankfully, I'm more under control now, but back then I was a mess. Actually, there's a video of that competition, that particular competition, and I can point to the exact moment I felt a snap in my wrist, and here it is. At that moment, I did not exactly know what happened, but it was extremely painful. But I was on stage, adrenaline's are pumping. I just ignored it and played through the entire program either way. I mean, I did not get to the finals, but I managed to pull through that performance. But afterwards, it was so bad. Like I couldn't bend my wrist at all afterwards. However, the next day, I signed myself up for an audition for an orchestra in Vietnam. And I passed the audition with a broken wrist. I'm cringing at myself for the sheer stupidity. So I got the orchestra job in Vietnam and went there. And guess what happened?
China has identified the cause of the mysterious new virus.
Coronavirus.
There are fears a rapidly spreading virus has reached Australia.
This is a rapidly emerging situation.
Yep. COVID happened and it was 2019. And because of COVID, I was actually separated from my wife now, but then fiance for 2 years. She was stuck in France and I was stuck in Myanmar. My wrist is hurting every day. Even from picking up a cup of water, it hurts. I didn't touch the violin because I couldn't. It was depressing. So I just took some time off and decided to rest. Every once in a while, I will come back and I try to pick up the violin and play. It would be okay for the first 5 minutes, but then the next day, the pain would be more excruciating and like my wrist would crack every time I twisted at that time. Now it's a little bit better, but at that time, and also there's no wrist specialist around my area in Myanmar. I was with my parents in a remote farm in the forest. It was very therapeutic and relaxing. I took some time reflecting on what I have learned over the years and my mistakes, and it was a welcomed rest. All those years studying abroad has been such a storm and it passed by so fast. I never really took time to sit down and reflect or recollect. And during the 2 years in the farm with my parents is actually when I sat down and thought about everything I learned and distilled it more, and everything I learned become clearer in my head during the rest. Funnily enough, my wrist got better during COVID when I decided if I cannot play the violin, I might as well try something else. So I picked up a guitar and started playing. I don't know how to play the guitar. I started watching YouTube tutorials and started teaching myself. And when I got to this bar chords on the guitar where you use your index finger and press down on all 6 strings, and when I pressed like that, I did not feel pain for the first time. And I think the action of playing bar chords is like really good therapy for wrist strengthening it without bending it. So I would practice guitar every day for 4 to 5 hours and just playing non-stop. And at some point, I've noticed that I can finally bend my wrist again without hurting. And I slowly pick up the violin from there, and it's already 2022. Before I know it, it's already 2022. 2 years has passed by and I couldn't really play the violin at all. At that time, a bunch of things happened also. I was teaching online and then Myanmar had the military coup. The internet got cut for 5 months or something like that. So I couldn't teach my students for 5 months because I teach online, all the students from overseas. And during the online teaching, I couldn't actually demonstrate. I was verbally describing what I want them to do, which made me understand violin techniques even more, having to verbally describe it. And I started noticing my own technical shortcomings, and I become more self-conscious, more conscious about what to do on the violin. And I think during those 2 years, I never stopped improving in terms of violin playing. It's just I did not It's just that I've been doing it in my head instead of doing it physically, if that makes sense. Anyway, my wife managed to find a job in Dubai, and she managed to convince the boss to give me an interview, and I got the job in Dubai as well, the same job. And we met finally after 2 years of separation, and we got married in Abu Dhabi in UAE, which is pretty crazy. And during my time working in Dubai, a student of mine suggested, hey, have you seen this crazy violinist playing this piece? And then it was Roman Kim playing Beethoven 5th Symphony. And I watched it, I was like, wow, this is crazy. And then my student said, I bet you cannot play like that. And that hit me pretty hard. It was hurtful. I felt pretty sad. I was like, oh yeah, you think I can't do it? I'll prove it to you. And that's how I started. And when I finally finished transcribing Roman Kim's Beethoven 5th by ear, I decided I really want to record what I did. I was very proud of myself. After recovering from an injury, going straight into this, I thought I did a good job. And now we're here, talking to you guys on YouTube. What crazy turn of events. Oh, thankfully I have cleaned up my act, more or less. I mean, I still drink beer time to time, but not to the point of what I did back then. And yeah, so that's the story of how I hurt my wrist and how I recovered and how I started making these YouTube videos. Anyway, I hope that wasn't so long-winded. I'm not a natural storyteller, and I'm not very good at talking. And I don't really want to write a script because it would feel like working. I'm doing this as a hobby. I don't want it to feel like work. I'll continue to make these videos because it's kind of fun. Anyway, I hope that was an interesting story, and I hope you don't do those stupid things that I did and learn from my mistake. Learn to be more assertive when you feel things are wrong. Live healthier because your hands are your livelihood. I know I have to treasure them even more now. And always warm up for your practices. I mean, there are a bunch more crazy things that happened in Israel. I was pretty young and reckless, and we did a bunch of crazy things. I hope it was fun listening to my embarrassing and stupid decisions, life choices. I'll try to record some videos when I'm in Vienna. There will be a performance. I don't know what I will perform yet, but it's mostly for students. Maybe live. Anyway, I hope it was a fun watch. See you next time. Bye.